GM.
Hi, everyone.
GM.
How's it going? So yeah, how are we getting, who's starting us off here?
Dave, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, why don't we I'll kick us off here. So just to introduce myself, I'm Dave Uhryniak. I lead ecosystem development at Tron DAO.
And my name is Keanu. I do blockchain forensics and community management, all that kind of stuff. I work for a company called Moontax.
My name is Max. I'm a degenerate, and I'm the CEO of Solon Labs.
My name is Gabriel, and I'm the CTO of Invarch Network.
Nice. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so here we're going to talk to you today about the role of NFTs in decentralization, right? And I think we were going to start with kind of going through each person to talk about what decentralization kind of means to us. So you want to start down there on the end?
So at Invarch, we started with the goal of bringing intellectual property to the blockchain and actually making it decentralized, breaking out of the global intellectual property industry, which is extremely centralized. And we realized that that to achieve that, to actually make that compliant, we need to start by making a framework for DAOs. So our big focus right now to bring that that possibility is to implement very powerful DAO primitives on chain that can interact between many multiple chains naturally, and we're achieving that by making them extremely flexible and allowing anyone from NFT communities to businesses to actually bring their operations on chain.
So I'm a big believer of decentralization versus centralization is not this black or white thing, that in fact it's more of a scale. And really what you have to ask yourself when you're evaluating the level of decentralization of an entity, a protocol, or whatever you're interacting with is, one, how does it get data from the blockchain? Two, who owns its smart contracts? Do they even have an owner to begin with? If it has no owner, that's actually probably a great thing. Is it owned by a DAO? And then three is governance. And governance is this huge thing on chain that no one has really ever been able to figure out yet. And we have bicameral governance systems, we have quadratic voting, we have NFT-based governance systems, we have the Nouns DAO, we have a lot of variety. But no one's been able to solve the issue of how we can both fairly represent shareholders and users at the same time. And what you'll see with a lot of large protocols on the blockchain, for example, Uniswap, is their governance tokens are extremely consolidated. You know, rich people tend to be really great at making money, and you'll see that if you don't create mechanisms that incentivize decentralization over time, that money just finds its way back into the hands of the rich. So it's a question of how can we decentralize these systems slowly over time without and represent all shareholders equitably.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of the same for me. Decentralization, for me, really comes from two things. Because I work in taxation, and then I also build communities and run a few NFT projects. And as you're going through taxes and stuff, like you'll notice a lot of people actually don't own the IP rights to their NFTs and stuff. Most images are uploaded to OpenSea. It's not on IPF. It's centralized. So like, there's a lot of misinformation with these NFTs and their contracts and stuff of like, okay, what do I really own, you know? And then the second part for me is community. In Utah, we're passing the Utah DAO Act to bring in, like, instead of an LLC, more of an LLD to operate services for businesses and stuff. So a little bit different from the wrapped LLC, but yeah, the big thing for me with that is community. Like, how can I take all my entities and my coins and everything at the end of the year, do taxes, and then figure out a way that we could probably incentivize users and people to move those taxes into things that we want to vote on. That'd be a really cool way to do things. So really exploring decentralization with, you know, NFTs, taxes, communities. I'm seeing like there's a lot of gray areas. You know, do we want more centralization? You know, with this NFT project that we're doing, we're for the Bronze Project is, you know, we're giving them rights to hip-hop beats, and then we also have legal rights going into IPFS saying what you can do with that. And so, yeah, it's giving the users rights, and building community, for me, is what's the big thing for decentralization NFTs.
Okay, great. So at Tron DAO, when we think of decentralization, really for quite a few years now, our mission has been to decentralize the web, right? So we have over 140 million accounts around the world, and our mission continues to be to decentralize the web. So what does that mean for us? We want to provide access to Web3 to people across the world, not just the rich people that Max was talking about, but everyone. We also want to enable our accounts to transact with anyone that they want to, right? This enables them to get the daily goods, the daily things that they need to get through their lives, whether it's, you know, a micro payment or using TRX to make a purchase at a grocery store. And then lastly, we want them to be able to do this without censorship in a free environment, right? So when we think about decentralization at Tron, those are really some of the things that we're thinking about.
So a lot of people don't really realize that if you look at any protocol that exists on the blockchain today, on any blockchain, a great example is Uniswap. Uniswap is the world's largest DApp. In the past 2 months, they've done more volume than Coinbase has. So if you look at Uniswap, their front end is actually centralized. All these protocols, they're decentralized on the back end, right? Their smart contracts live on the Ethereum blockchain or whatever respective blockchain they're hosted on. But if you look at their front ends, they tend to be hosted on centralized servers, an AWS server or something equivalent, where in theory the issue is a malicious employee or actor could deploy a visually identical interface that could connect to malicious smart contracts and steal millions of dollars before anyone noticed or could do anything about it. Or the greater issue is censorship. If you're one of the 1.8 billion people who live in countries that are absolutely anti-crypto, then they can just block your website whenever they feel like. Any government can block these websites whenever they feel like, and that's the greater issue. So we are a football field away from getting to a point where this space is actually decentralized. Yes, the Ethereum blockchain is decentralized. Yes, Bitcoin is decentralized, but none of these front ends are yet.
Right. So, all right, let's take a look at how NFTs, the role they might play in decentralization. So when I think about that, I think there's something that I call global personal capitalism that's going to be enabled by the proliferation of non-fungible tokens. So what does global personal capitalism mean? It's the capability of anyone in the world to be able to control and monetize their personal information, their activities, or their creations, right? So anything that you do online, anything you create, you should be able to benefit from. You're the owner of that information. So just think about in your daily lives, right? How the things you do online, whether it's social media or you're buying something, that's your information that right now someone uses for free, right? And why should that persist? Why should that go on? And NFTs make it possible to where that won't persist, and it will give power back to the person that created that information, right? And I think that's really something that is going to change the world. It's going to give people in impoverished areas kind of a new source of income, and it's going to give people in more developed areas the ability to control their information, everything from health records that could, let's say, you know, God forbid, you're struck with an illness or something and you're getting tests and tests and tests. That's your information. You should be able to monetize that information somehow because it's valuable somewhere, right? And that's what I think, that's what I call global personal capitalism, and that's what's going to happen as NFTs become further and further adopted.
Yeah, I find it very interesting to use these NFTs in a composable manner for intellectual property, for creation, for anywhere from code to art. Because, for example, in open source code, you write a lot of code that is reused by a lot of people, often without attribution. But those end products that end up using code that you wrote, they are profiting, but you're not seeing any of that. And NFTs could help us get that attribution both in the identity form and also in the financial profit, because you can tie all of that, all of those who actually contributed to the final product directly or indirectly back to the individual NFTs that compose the final thing.
Yeah, NFTs generally are just a great way to prove the history of something. For example, I created some open source code, I bundle it up, put it on IPFS, create an NFT, boom. Now I can prove to the world that, yes, I was the first person to create this code. No one can argue it. Yeah, GitHub kind of already does that for me, but GitHub is centralized, right? In theory, GitHub could go down and everyone could lose their entire record of every single commit that they've ever performed. And imagine losing, years and years and years of open source work and not being able to prove that you committed anything at all. So it can be extremely detrimental, not only to artists, but also to developers or any other category. IP in general, NFTs are a great way to prove, but generally, NFTs do also have their own issues, right? NFTs are a little more cost prohibitive than tokens are generally on the blockchain. It makes a lot more sense for people to use this from more of a global perspective on layer 2s or other blockchains, maybe like Tron or Binance blockchain. But I'm a layer 2 maxi because I'm a huge fan of decentralization. I'm a huge Ethereum maxi. I love the inheritance of security, but I'll pass it on.
Yeah, kind of going back to like the health thing. So recently I had to refill a prescription, and every time I go to my doctor and I go for a 1-year renewal. So last time we went through the whole process and everything, and then I get home and they're like, yeah, everything will be to you within a day. Well, I go and look and it's not coming through, and there's an error on the government website. And so I call them, they're like, oh, sorry, we accidentally, screwed up your social security number. I'm like, if this was an NFT and this renewal process was based on attributes where my information is in there and it's non-changeable, I wouldn't have had that issue. That process would have been a lot faster and easier to recommend than having to wait and figure out, okay, what happened, and the doctor then realized that they had, fat-fingered the numbers. So yeah, like just trying to get everything. I mean, medical data is so big, especially with like IP. With using like IPFS and things, we could probably offload that and have folks be able to access their records and their health and all that. You have things like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. Like all of that information is very centralized, but we could definitely be using it for our benefit. We absolutely should. So yeah, and then like kind of going into DAOs, the one big thing about like DAOs for me is cooperatives. You could set up a DAO as a cooperative where you have these other NFT DAOs, and every holder, if they go somewhere else, say you have a grocery store local to you, and they have an NFT for benefits. I mean, Smith's does it, Walmart does it. If you go to Sephora, you get points on a system, and then you can get new makeup. So all this stuff could be tokenized into NFTs, and then you could use social tokens to reward users, especially with DAOs and cooperatives where I'm getting, say, I have MoonTax who's allowing 20% off taxation if you're a part of the Utah Web3 DAO, right? And so like things like that are interchangeable, and we can use those NFTs to help each other out.
One of the larger issues surrounding decentralization through NFTs is there are plenty of great examples of DAOs that are their governance tokens are NFTs instead of normal ERC20 tokens. The most famous probably is the Nouns DAO, one of my favorite DAOs. It's pretty cool. I mean, a new noun is minted every single day. Whoever is the highest bidder, they get it, and then they get a vote how to spend the treasury funds. But the larger issue is with NFTs especially, in a case like that, yeah, it's not too difficult because the people bidding on it in the first place have a lot of money. These nouns go for a fortune. I mean, they go for like $40,000 plus, right? But let's say on the smaller scale, right? Like, let's say we're really trying to decentralize. We want to be inclusive of more people. Then the greater issue is identity. How do you prove identity? How do you prove that someone is unique? And how can you prove that identity on chain?
Yeah, and I think overall, those are all great points. Another driver of really Web3 adoption that will be in part driven by NFTs is adoption by Web2 in the commercial sector. I think that's really going to be significant. And that adoption, I think, is going to be driven by a combination of consumer preferences as they reach out to these companies and want more of Web3 capabilities, including NFTs, and then also by just traditional business needs, right? When companies start to look at Web3 through the lens of ROI and traditional financial metrics, there's a lot of, they make sense, right? All these capabilities in Web3, including NFTs, really create, in many cases, positive financial metrics that traditional businesses will really look at and use to make decisions on whether or not they want to pursue. And that's really, I think, going to be another significant driver.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that I kind of tangle with is because like I came into crypto as like a nominee. I wanted to be decentralized, all that stuff. Then you kind of start getting the taxes, and we have to work with the government, right? And like that's kind of a gray line. Like, how do you decentralize but also work with the government, report your taxes? And which is why I would love to see like a tax system where we could vote on where our taxes go, and some sort of governance within that system. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, with taxes.
Back to people in Web3 paying their taxes, I believe a report came out recently that showed about 3% of people in the United States that held cryptocurrency reported it. 3%. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of those people are more of the high net worth individuals. Yeah. But really, focusing on decentralization, yeah. If you look at the compromisation, like the user base of this group, they're all like, a lot of these people came from deep state background or like QAnon or, they love the Silk Road or whatever it was, they're decentralization maxis and they don't really want to report in general. And then you have the whole other side, which is, well, I'm just a normal person who lives in the US, I own some crypto, but it's too much work to report it. I don't really care. I doubt the government's really going to care. So, bringing this back to the whole decentralization through NFTs thing, it's going to be very interesting to see how the world evolves as we continue to move on. If we go into a global recession, obviously that will create a lot more financial turmoil. We'll see a lot more inflation and corruption globally. We'll see a few new governments likely. And what that will mean is more people will be looking for alternate financial infrastructure. What we're providing for them is, for the first time in history, decentralization is feasible. For the first time in history, you don't have to rely on your local government. You don't have to rely on your local currency. You don't need to use a bank. Now, how can we make this experience more user-friendly? How can we truly make it decentralized? And how can we make it more inclusive?
Right, those are great points. And I think, one thing, I think you're right. We are heading into a significant recession, at least in the U.S. And I think these turbulent financial times often lead to alternative systems. But what we're seeing right now is that many governments around the world really don't want to have competition for their currency, right? And that's a big hurdle that crypto needs to cross. But I think it can be done.
These governments are honestly shooting themselves in the foot, in my opinion, because you look at Nigeria, for example, which is, I think, the second largest market globally for cryptocurrency. Over 200 million people live there. The average GDP per capita is just over $2,000, yet you have 20 to 50 million active users of cryptocurrency. The reason why is they've been systemically screwed for as long as they can remember. They had a dictator who came back as their president, and then they had the government say a snake ate $2 billion and a monkey stole another $1 billion. So the corruption has been blatant there, extremely blatant, and the people are sick of it. And during the pandemic, people who were protesting SARS, which is their equivalent of police brutality in Nigeria, had their bank accounts frozen, and therefore they couldn't afford to feed their families. So this gives them a real alternative for the first time in history. So obviously a lot of people there are adopting it. And these countries, by trying to blue ball cryptocurrency and try to really just, oh, please use our local currency, please, we're going to force you to use our local currency. Well, that's getting less people to use it, right? It's pushing people towards decentralization, which is good for us, good for the space, but not good for these local countries. It's going to create a lot of turmoil. There's going to be we might see some violent switchovers.
Well, that's also helping fuel the creator economy more and more. Crypto itself and NFTs made it all possible for people to just start their own businesses, building and creating content online. It was already possible, but now they can do that properly. They can do that with this digital currency that they can sell to anywhere in the world, and they can now actually get their content out there. No fear of it being stolen. People do copy things, but the chain doesn't lie.
This is where it comes back to art, because Nigeria, once again, is a great example where, let's say I'm a digital artist in Nigeria and I'm creating digital art. Well, Getty Image probably he stole it 5 seconds after I uploaded it to the internet, and I'm never going to be able to prove that I created it originally, and I will receive none of the profits from it. And that's where we all come back to NFTs. Where in the US, yeah, it's fairly easy to show, I created this work of art, blah, 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 but once again, everywhere else in the world has it a shit ton worse than we do. They deal with corruption and inflation every day. Billions of people. In the US, we live fairly comfortably. The government will bail banks out for us. We don't really have to worry. We can sleep well at night. But these people, for the longest time, have always been treated like shit. People have been stealing their stuff as long as possible. It's been because they can get away with it. But now, for the first time in history, they have an alternative.
Yeah, Max is exactly right. I'm on the board of a new charity, and I function as their blockchain strategic advisor. And our first round of projects are all in actually Nigeria, and we're using blockchain to really verify that corruption isn't happening. We have kind of a stage gate process at each level of dispersing the funds to make sure that exactly that situation, that the funds aren't being mysteriously eaten by a snake or a monkey runs off with them. And it's really something that blockchain and crypto and NFTs are helping to overcome.
Yeah. Kind of to add to that, I work with one of my friends from Take Up Space NFT Community. She lives in Nigeria, and she does holistic wellness services. And I have found that especially today, I went and did the meditation session upstairs or on the NFT artist area, and that was like a 30-minute deal. We got a POAP and everything, but helping out my friend from Nigeria, she actually does the same thing. She helps me. We do meditation sessions, it's kind of almost like therapy in a sense. But how it works is she has an NFT for different tiers of stuff that she does, and then we'll meet up and I just buy the NFT, or if I get one and then I have continuous services through her and she's paid through Ethereum. So now she has a way to make funds for herself, make a better life for herself using NFTs in Nigeria, and I'm able to transfer over ETH and pay her for those services. And so yeah, I've really seen that in the holistic and wellness space is really doing, it really helps them out with NFTs.
If you guys could each have one line to wrap this up, we got a minute left.
I'll start. NFTs will reshape the world. Avoid CBDCs.
Yeah, one of my biggest things, building community around decentralization, we really need to get rid of the word diversity. It divides us a lot. So, FTX had the most diverse team, right? What we need to be looking at is intersectionality. Where can our good deeds intersect? Regardless of race, religion, creed, anything you have, it's more about people. It's are we here to show up and do good, or are we here to show up and do bad, right? So, yeah.
I would say centralization works great until it doesn't. And decentralization is the future.
I'd like to paraphrase a quote from the Crypto Anarchist Manifest. That the last quote, the last sentence says that this seemingly minor discovery out of an arcane branch of mathematics, which is cryptography, will be the wire clippers that dismantle the barbed wire around intellectual property.
Can I take a selfie with you guys? Thank you.
Nicely done, guys. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.